Recording in progress. Welcome, everybody, to Solo of the Month. My name is Matthew Allison with the Flute World Collective. And today we're going to start with the Faure Berceuse, taking it bit by bit and talking about practicing it. So, general practice of the Faure. We are in F major mostly. We do dip into some other keys through modulation a bit. But I would suggest starting with a warm up in F major. So, how many out there are already warmed up today? Has anybody played yet? I'm not sure what time zones we're in. Maybe, maybe not.
Little.
A little bit? All right. So let's just start by playing the F major scale nice and slow. And we can do this together. You can leave yourselves muted for now. And then we'll talk about some other ways that we can warm up. Starting with the F major scale, 1 flat, B flat. Thumb B flat is useful in it. We'll go nice and slow. 1, 2, 3. And if you approach your F major scale differently, of course, none of us had our microphones on, so we'd have no shame if you want to stop at the top or repeat something. This piece does extend past that high F, but before we do that, I want to spend just a little bit more time getting comfortable with the tone up high. I'm going to start with a harmonic, the low F fingering, thumb 1, 2, 3, 1, pinky, and just make sure that that low F has a lot of great foundation to it. Without changing fingerings, let's blow to the octave from the low F. Let's take it to the fifth, which will be a C sound. And then using that same low F fingering, the harmonic up to the high F. Which will be flatter than a normal F. With harmonics, when I first started playing them, my approach was to blow harder and tighten everything up. As I've practiced them more, I realized if I just feel growth and space in the back of my mouth, I can feel the harmonics naturally kind of open. So if you felt any tension, let's just take a second and try going from the octave to that fifth again, just ah. And then maybe try going from the fifth to the second octave. How's everybody feeling with that? Would anybody like to demonstrate their harmonics or any questions? You can unmute yourself or play or type in the chat. All is fair game today as we're just practicing together. Feeling okay? All right, so the other thing I like to do for the high notes is what I call undertone harmonics. I will finger the high F this time, thumb 1, 3, 1, pinky, and purposefully underblow it to get a low sound. Pitch-wise, it's around a B flat. But what I'm trying to do is just feel everything really open and my air super hot. A slight opening and increase of air speed. So opening here more, increasing the amount of air coming through my throat is going to increase the air speed as it comes through the same aperture or similar aperture. And then floating to the high F, thinking like a dropping down sensation in my body instead of a tightening up sensation. So the same thing with the high F sharp fingering. Make sure you're not using thumb B flat. Thumb 1, 3, 3, pinky. Hot air. Let's repeat the F sharp. High G fingering, G no thumb, hot. Hot air, loose face. Once again on the G. The G sharp, the A flat fingering, 2, 3, 4, and pinky, no thumb. And the last one, that high A fingering, thumb 2, 1 pinky. So I like to practice breaking habits that I might have developed when I was in 6th grade or 7th grade, whenever I first learned these high note fingerings and I thought I had to muscle through them. I like to break them by doing the exact opposite, by turning them upside down on themselves. To me, that's the fastest way for me to convince myself I can do things differently. So how many of you have ever practiced the high notes by purposefully getting that low sound? Has anybody done that before? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Let's talk a little bit. What did you notice? Or if you just tried it for the first time today, what did you feel? What did you like? What felt weird? What felt great? We have a shy crowd today?
Okay, I'll just say that I'm playing with allergy lips today because I've eaten some nuts stupidly. So for me, it's just helping me find my lips.
Sure. And I'm so sorry that you're having an allergy reaction today, but were you able to notice the air column change shape inside like the throat as you tried it that way?
Oh yeah, the difference between the different registers, yeah.
Wonderful. Good. What else did people notice out there? You can, there's reactions on Zoom too. How many people thought that was a useful exercise? How many are like not so sure? Give me some thumbs up or some thumbs sideways. Thumbs up from Gwen. Good. Useful, Yvonne. Thank you. Awesome. So, of course, regular long tones are also an amazing way of practicing up the register. But kind of right now, I'm doing a speed warm up to get through this. So where that will be most useful in the Berceuse will be that measure 47 when we move up the scale to the high A. So I would also then, looking at measure 47, start by playing the high A. Maybe even find the undertone to the high A. And then work my way backward and forward to it. So that's A, G sharp, which is the note before it in the scale, but also the note before it in the measure. A, G sharp, A. I'm going to add the F sharp. Add the E. And while doing this, I may as well have pitch in mind, pitch in consideration. Now my high A, I think, is coming out a little flat. I didn't really warm up as much as I should have before this class because I thought, well, we'll warm up together. So I'm going to push my head joint in a little bit so I don't have to work quite as hard. And then maybe add the D too. And this might be a place where you'll find it useful just to practice the A major scale. If you go back to the pickup to measure 46, which is an A, we have A, B, C natural, which would actually make it an A minor scale, sorry, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. So what that creates is the ascending pattern of an A melodic minor scale. So those of you who are taking lessons and your teachers tell you practice your scales, the reason is so that way when we play music, we don't have to be as in our head about it. We can just play the scale. Let's try that A melodic minor ascending scale. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And we'll just go up for now. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And if we have the rhythm, we have 6, 1, 4, 6, 1, 3, 4, 6, and the next note will be a C. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's try that. I'm going to turn the metronome on super slow at 40, and feel free to practice that along with me, and then we'll give you a second to practice it out, and then we'll discuss. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. So take a moment and just notice if that A minor scale feels any different now that you've kind of spent some time warming up those notes. And while we're giving people a moment to play that, to apply it, to practice it, if you've got any questions or thoughts or would like to demonstrate what you're working on right now, please go ahead and unmute yourself or type in the chat or give some kind of feedback. Technique-wise, I noticed for myself, the E natural to F sharp wasn't clean that time. So I'm going to take a moment and isolate just that interval without playing. I enjoy resting my flute on my left shoulder and holding the foot joint of the flute in front of me so that way I can see all of my fingers. And I'm simply going to look at my fingers with intent as I move from the E natural fingering to the F sharp fingering. Without any movement, close my eyes and mentally practice that change also. And then I'm going to try that interval on the flute. This is an important exercise for me, especially as I gain understanding of a flute. I don't know, those of you who don't know me, I'm on a different flute like all the time. None of the flutes I play are actually my own flutes. So they all have different spring tensions and different key heights. So sometimes it takes me a little while to make sure that I understand that response to the keys. You might notice though, if a spring starts to get tired or as a pad starts to get tired, you might also have to pay a little bit of attention. Sometimes we think about, is this the flute or is this me? And when you really pay attention to what your fingers are doing, then you'll have a little bit better of understanding is it the flute or is it me? So with the high notes, I know we've jumped straight to the high notes. Let's also just think about that last note in the piece, the high F. So this high F is a pianissimo note, an extra soft note, or extra pure. So I think of dynamics as tone density, and I think of tone color in that way in general. So whenever we play a note, a lot of the notes higher than it are sounding, and a lot of the frequencies lower than it are also responding. We just only tend to understand the principal pitch that's being performed. That's part of why I love the undertone and the harmonics, because all of those pitches are present in the tone that we're playing, at all times. But another thing that's useful is to try to take those harmonics away, and to do that we practice whistle tones. How many of you have done whistle tones before? Yep. I don't practice them often enough, so it usually takes me like a minute or two to find them. But let's just play the high F And we can find the whistle tone a few ways, starting by playing and then let the air speed slow down but stay open and hot. And eventually when the airspeed gets slow enough, we get the whistle tone. Or sometimes I just like to start from that slow, from the minimum. That whistle tone is about as close to a sine wave or pure tone wave as any instrument can get in music. I don't think any acoustic instruments are able to reach that, but it gets pretty close. It gets to be a pretty pure tone. So those of you who have whistle toned before, do you have any advice on how you practice whistle tones or how you find them or approach whistle tones?
I was taught to go from above as part of practicing really, really quietly, but to go from very, very slowly from above until you find the pitch that you're looking for.
Cool. Can you demonstrate that, or are your lips?
I don't know. See. I don't know if you can hear that.
Yeah, can you hit the original sound for musicians on button at the top left?
Uh,
Zoom does an amazing job of trying to cancel out background.
is that? That might be it. Okay. Whoops. I don't know if you can hear.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes you can find the whistle tones more easily than you can actually find a really quiet held pitch, you know?
Sure. Yeah, and it actually sounded like you were closer to the held pitch than a whistle tone. The air pressure or the way that you were condensing the air felt a little bit more like actual playing style,
Uh-huh.
which is also useful. Mhm. So alternating between a whistle tone and a piano playing in your warm up is going to help you have more success as you approach that F. You can use the whistle tones. And Patricia, did you have a comment that you would like to share too?
I practiced whistle tones using a high B note. I started with that. That's how I was taught. I didn't know you could do whistle tones on every note. Sometimes I can't hit it, but sometimes I do that when I'm in the choir loft because I can sort of get my embouchure in place quietly.
Yeah, it's
So,
a great warm up to do when you can't warm up. Also, I do that quite a lot. Also, so with the whistle tone, we can apply what I call growing intervals from that F, moving toward the C. So that's whistle tone F E F. F D F next. And then I'll do F C F. So moving between notes with whistle tones is really, really tricky. And it might not happen in a first practice or first week of practice, but I like to approach the high F with as much ease as possible. So that way, when I am applying it in performance, my body hasn't learned any tension or tightness. So the undertone harmonics and the whistle tones and harmonics in general, just feeling a sense of calm, a sense of simplicity, a sense of peace when I'm practicing is going to help me feel that way when I try it in music. So one last thing for this, just this upper register tone warm up here. I'm going to do that same exercise, the growing intervals, but with actually playing. And I'm going to play at my desired dynamic, which is pianissimo. So F, E, F, pianissimo. F, D, F. F, C, F. Keeping my throat open and trying to avoid tension in the face. So go ahead and try that and see how it feels, and let me know if you have any thoughts or questions. And probably I'm going about this in the backwards order of really what I would do. So looking at this piece, I would have, and I should have, started with some more low register warm-ups first, especially since we jumped right into harmonics. But I see that we moved down to a low C. So let's just take the notes in the F major scale, F, E, D, and low C, and just long tone style those. So F and E. E to D. D and low C. So maybe it would be better to start with low note long tones before moving into the harmonics. And we do move down the scale with that same kind of pattern, either F major or C major, not quite sure yet. So let's assume C major for a second and just work the C major 5-note scale pattern. Low C, D, E, F, G, F, E, D, C, going from the low C up. And maybe repeat that a few times. Now let's do 4 notes and leave out the F natural. So we'll have C, D, E, G, E, D, C, and you can think groups of triplet if you like. So that's C, D, E, G, E, D, C, D, E, G, E, C, D, C. And then you might notice we're kind of working the technique and the tone in measure 19. So then the next trick is to go from the C to the A. You can do a pinky shift, and if you're going to shift from the low C to the A with the actual movement, I'd suggest watching the fingers first, since we're coordinating quite a lot of finger movement. Or some days I might be a little bit lazy and leave my pinky on that low C fingering and go from the C to the A just by opening the 3, 1, 2, 3. Maybe practice the technique of that interval by itself. And then add in the E, D, C, A. So this is the latter half of measure 19. That was with my pinky being lazy. And that was with the pinky pull. Trying all of measure 19. And yes, most professional musicians don't just play straight through a piece of music and call it practice. We'll look at the hardest parts first and spend some time there. So for me, I haven't actually played this piece before today. I just downloaded it right before this. I glanced through it and was just looking through at things that I thought might look tricky. And I spent some time practicing that. So let's just look together at the first 23 measures or so, that opening first half of that page. Are there any issues or concerns that anybody has there that you would like to talk about how to practice that? Oh, and I see Ray has a question. How long do you practice those tone and whistle tones daily for best impact? Okay, so that's a really great question. And maybe one that I don't want my students to hear, but I spend most of my practice time on warm-ups. I like to do tone and technical warm-ups, and then when I come to the music, I like to think that everything is already done and I can isolate a couple of measures and then just play. So it depends on how much time I'm practicing. Right now that I'm working a full-time job and still teaching 28 flute students, I don't have a whole lot of time of my own to dedicate to practice. So if I'm practicing, for example, if I can only find an hour after the 2 jobs are done, then I'd probably spend a half hour of that hour practicing tone and technique. And of that half hour warm-up, the long tones would probably take, I don't know, 8 minutes, and the whistle tones, I'd probably spend 2 or 3 minutes on that. So maybe a third of my warm-up, which is about half of my practice. So a sixth of the amount of time that I'm practicing would be long tones and harmonics. But if I had a shorter practice time, I would probably spend more time on tone than technique. So maybe it would be a larger portion of that practice time. Yeah. How about you, Ray? How much time would you spend? Or around the room, how
I
much?
would say, yeah, I'm an amateur flutist, so whenever I can, it's one of those things I do it when I practice that kind of thing. I say I'm so glad that I practice that, but then I don't, practice enough to remember next time to do it.
Yeah. So for me, some long tones, some harmonics, those undertone harmonics are common. Whistle tones, I honestly don't practice super often, unless I have a piece of music where I see a pianissimo in the upper register. I should practice them regularly, because then I wouldn't need to practice them as much when I get to a piece like this. Any other thoughts or questions with this opening section, or any other thoughts of how long you would spend with the warm-up? We've spent a good amount of it on this already in this session together today, so hopefully that's encouraging a great practice habit.
Hey, Matthew, what about something that I've been practicing and wondering is about where to take breaths?
Breath?
Yeah.
Oh, great question.
So I
This
tried,
piece specifically?
yeah. Well, I try to mark every 4 measures to take a breath, but sometimes it don't fit into the phrasing. So maybe everybody's thought about that. I don't know, but that's a question that I've had. Where is a good place to take breaths?
That's a really good question. And I don't know this piece super well, so let's figure it out together. I hope you'll be patient with me. It looks like every 4 measures about makes sense. That long note at the end of every 4 measures, just make it a little bit shorter than long, and it looks like it'd be time. Most of these phrases look like you could take a breath halfway through too in the tied notes. So for example, in measure 4, maybe breaking the tie and having F, C, D, B flat, D, F, C, D, B flat, D. So with breathing for myself, it has to do with tempo usually, and tension. So if I avoid tension, then breath comes naturally into the body. And maybe I'll make an aside about my backwards thought of breathing also. But let's try that opening. I'm going to turn a metronome on to dotted coordinate equals 40. So 40 for the big pulse, just to have a nice slow feel for it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to try taking it every 4 breaths, like 4 measures, like Chris recommended.
I don't know about anybody else. I can't hear you.
I forgot to hit the original sound. Zoom. Let's try this together. Let's try every 2 or 4 and see what fits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. All right, sorry about the original sound thing there again. So that was me trying to do every 4 measures, which is a little bit hard at measure equals 40. The printed tempo in this Flute Tunes version is dotted coordinate equals 76, would be almost twice that fast. So making 4 measure breaths, I think, would be pretty easy that way. But it does feel like in that opening section, it is very possible to take the breath every 2 measures. So since I forgot the sound earlier, that would be... I'm personally getting too much air when I try 2 measures, although it sounds almost like a question and answer type thing. So phrasing wise or musically, I think that makes sense too. The 4 measures. Feels more natural. And just because I'm not taking a breath at the tied note in measure 4 and the tied note in measure 8 doesn't mean I can't have a sense of lift there too. So what are your all's thoughts? Are you doing 2 measure or 4 measure breath phrases there? I see 4, 2 measure, 4 measure. Yeah, so I think both are pretty appropriate. And then I took a sneak breath in measure 18, 19, 20, and measure 21 between those 2 Fs. If I took the breath in measure 18, I could probably avoid doing that, especially at the faster tempo. But I like the way it sounds also. So by that, I mean after the A, F, F, E, D, C, kind of thinking of that as a tail. Sounds musically quite appropriate. Any other thoughts or questions in this opening section? Before I get carried away with the Faure, because I was just looking at the sign-up sheet, how many people here are working on the Popp? Is anybody working on the Popp also? Okay, so we'll spend another minute on this Faure and ask if there's any additional questions in that opening section. Type in, unmute yourself, whatever feels good, or would anybody like to demonstrate their performance of that opening? Let's go for it, Patricia.
Okay. I think one of the hardest parts for me is going from the low F to the low C. I just fumble, but okay.
Bravo, and thank you for sharing yourself today, Patricia. All right, so Patricia had a concern about going from the F to the low C, and I have a thought about that, but I don't want this to be the Matthew show. So before I give a few suggestions, anybody in the room have suggestions for Patricia of how you practice moving from the F to low C? I see Hillary is demonstrating. She's got an itchy nose, but she's showing that she's taking oil from her nose. And it's so funny because a lot of flute players call it pinky grease. Not grease, but oil. We take oil from our nose or from our forehead, or some people have it behind the ear. And then you wipe it on the keys to help lubricate the actual metal and let it slide back and forth. This suit I'm playing on today is like an intermediate level flute. So it's kind of clanky, but it has no rollers or anything to help. And the contouring of the foot joint isn't super comfortable. Or isn't enhanced to be extra comfortable. So the pinky grease is crucial for me on this flute to move back and forth. That's another thing where you might look at that pinky and just practice maybe going from like an E flat to a low C just to watch the pinky move back and forth. If you notice a lot of wrist supination, then sometimes I'll put my, when I was a student in like high school, in boring classes, I'd put my hand on the desk and work on just moving my pinky as much as I could by itself. So just, you know, when I was in calculus or whatever, just going like this to try to feel my pinky isolating without the pronation and supination and of additional movement of the wrist or hand. And then you can also just watch yourself moving from the F to the C, which is then requiring coordination of 2 additional fingers. Yeah, Hillary?
So just one more thing is, I played piano before I played flute as a child. I mean, I don't know if you can see, if you keep your finger, if you keep your finger rounded on the D sharp key and then straighten out, if you practice that movement across to the different keys, depending on how many keys you've got, so that can also help, but keeping your hand relaxed, obviously, but that can really help the movement. And then so that you're flattening across both the C sharp and the C key when you're aiming from the F to the C.
Fantastic. I do that a lot when I move from C sharp to B, but I hadn't really thought about just a straightening sensation before. Thank you, Hillary. Any other thoughts? So that is the right way of doing it. And I will tell you, a lot of professionals don't do the things that they tell their students to do. We first practice the right way, and then we do the easy way, because there's so much to think about in music, right? So with the low C, it does affect some notes. For example, you can't play a low E. I'm going to turn the original sound back on so you can hear the flute. It makes using the low C pinky with a low E does have a very negative sound effect, but the low F doesn't have as much of a negative consequence if you cheat the pinky on the low C. So what I would do after practicing the right way, lazy Matthew, which I sometimes am, when my pinky is in the air for that low D that precedes the F, when I go to the F, I'll put my pinky on the low C key, and I call that pinky prep. So we have G, F, lift your pinky for the D, When you go to the F, put your pinky on the low C key, and then for the low C, all you have to do is close those two keys. I would avoid leaving the pinky in the air for the F because that does have more negative consequence than the low C prep would. At least it does for me on this flute. And again, I'm on a different flute all the time, and every flute's a little bit different. So practice the right way and see if prepping the pinky on the F makes sense for you on your flute. Some flutes you won't hear any difference, and it will make the technique easier. And if the technique is easier with less tension, then our tone is going to be more free and more open. And that will give the listener a better experience. And that's what we're after. So yes, there are right ways to do things according to the school of the flute. But I'm a believer that there's more right ways to do things. And if the end result is a better sound and a better experience for whomever is listening to you, then it might be worth considering. Is that fair? I sometimes cheat. But I cheat after I've also practiced the harder way, because I want to know that I could do it that way if I needed to for some reason. Let's see. Serena asked about tempo. You know, I just downloaded this piece today. I don't think I've even taught it before. It's a lovely little piece. 76 did feel a little bit fast. But 40 felt quite a bit slow. So I think it'd be interesting to play it at a couple of different tempos, depending on the mood that I'm trying to give. Those of you who have been practicing this for 20 days approximately, what tempos are you enjoying?
I like it a little slower. I feel like it gives a little more feeling. I've tried it faster just because I want to be able to do it faster, but I like the sound of the music better when it's a little slower.
Mm-hmm. What other tempos have we found for this piece? So it is an F major, which makes me think it doesn't need to be super slow or somber, but it is quite dreamy at the same time. So slower than 76, I think, is appropriate. As a teacher, I like to encourage my students to be able to play everything printed on the page, knowing though that most tempo suggestions weren't actually created by the composer, depending on the time period. More modern music, sure. Faure may have suggested 76. Chances are though, Faure even just wrote Allegretto moderato. But Allegretto moderato makes me think it probably should be at least 60. So let's see what 60 sounds like just to have an idea in our ear. This original sound thing, I don't know what just happened, if I am in original sound or not. Here we go. So here's 60. Ready? Yeah. So, what are y'all's thoughts about tempo here? For me, the faster tempo let me feel like I could get a little bit more appassionato, a little bit more passionate in some of those louder sections, the mezzo forte, where I don't know if I would have had the breath control at 40 for the beat in those sections. So let's talk tempo for just another moment. Other thoughts on tempo?
I like it at 60.
Matthew, I found a beautiful piano accompaniment on YouTube, and I think it's about 60. So I'm comfortable with 60.
Yeah, and there might be a reason that we don't want to play it that fast, or maybe we're not ready to. Tempo is something that with my students, never rush tempo. You know, play from a place that feels easy. If a faster tempo is going to make you feel tense, any of those low register or high note fingerings, don't do it yet. And where that I would practice tempo would be figuring out the technical aspects of it. So the A minor scale, just playing the A minor scale fast and fast and fast and faster would be a great way. And then some of that low finger noodling stuff. So maybe some scale patterns down low, or even just taking those kind of a beat plus a note. So in measure 29, I might even just practice the A, G, D, F by itself. A, G, D, F. Just because we don't do that as much. No problem there, but so figure out where the fingers need a little bit more work and practice those until you get those the desired tempo before you try playing straight through the piece. All right. So looking through the Faure in its entirety now, are there any other thoughts or questions? There's some repetitiveness in here. We covered that A minor scale going up. We covered the low F. We covered some of that low C technique. Any other thoughts or questions or suggestions, comments, or concerns about the Faure Berceuse? All right, then let's switch gears a little bit and just spend a little bit of time on the pop. And not everybody here is working on the pop, but you can still look at the music, right? Does anybody happen to have the IMSLP link handy that you can type it into the chat real quick? Also, while we're switching gears to the pop, it's Opus 407. So if you just Google Pop 407, you'll probably find it. The German name is Gruß on Ungarn. I don't speak German at all. Can anybody correct me on how that would be? I won't tell if you don't tell. Thank you. Just yesterday, I got noticed that it is now on the My Pianist Pro app. My Pianist Pro is an app. It's a paid app. It's $30 a year for full access, but there's a lot that you can do without paying $1. So he's doing a lot for free on it. So it is available both on Android and iPhone, My Pianist Pro. And he just put the pop on My Pianist Pro yesterday. So you can play along with an artificial intelligence accompaniment, which is different than playing along with a YouTube accompaniment. YouTube is, it doesn't follow you. It doesn't speed up or slow down. The artificial intelligence accompaniment is going to be actively listening. And if you slow down, it will slow down to some extent. If you speed up, it'll speed up too. So I recommend trying that app, whether you try the free version or the paid version. But for me, $30 a year to be able to practice along with the piano is worth it. Just to have that better understanding. And plus, especially if I'm going to do a performance, if I can practice with a fake piano a few times before the paid pianist, saves me a little bit of money. I've certainly saved more than $30 a year by rehearsing with the artificial intelligence before moving with a live pianist. So this is all in A minor. The pop is Greetings to Hungary is all in A minor. And it has a couple of sections. It starts off with an introductory section, which is kind of freeing. Then the Lento ben marcato, which is much slower according to My Pianist Pro than I thought it would be. And then it has the Presto section, which is not quite as fast as I feared it might be. In the Presto section, there is some double tonguing. So for me, I would probably start off playing an A minor, and working on double tonguing. So we just had that A minor scale in the Faure. So what a great transition moving from the Faure into the Popp. Again, with the A melodic minor, we had A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A as we go up the scale. I think that the harmonic version of the scale might be more useful to practice, which would leave the F natural, but be the same going up and down. So A, B, C, D, E, F, G sharp, A. Let's try just that scale, 2 octaves, nice and slow. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to pause at the top this time to make sure that we felt that minor third between the F and G sharp. In both octaves. Let's start in the high and come down. 1, 2, 3. Now, assuming that I am not on my second cup of coffee, which I am, but assuming I was just warming up the tongue a little bit. I like to keep everything as free from tension in my warm-ups as possible. So I'm going to do the same scale, but I'm going to subdivide at the 8th note level using my tongue, starting with just 2. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. The focus is going to be continuous airflow. So think legato as possible. Let's try that. We'll just go up the scale with a 2. 1, 2, 3, and... And I forgot to toggle the musician's original sound on and off before, but so that was all 2 going up the scale. In double tonguing, we have 2 syllables. I think tu, and my second syllable is Q, somewhere between a Q and a K. My tongue is spread very wide. So I'm going to do the same thing, 8th notes, but this time all Q or K or whatever your second syllable. Q, 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 Q. My focus is still continuous air column. 1, 2, and 3, and... And there's several exercises I could do just for double tonguing, but sticking with this general concept, same ascending A harmonic minor scale, alternating 2 Q. The goal is continuous air, and for me not to be able to tell the difference between the 2 and the Q when listening. 2 Q, 1, 2, and 3, and... That's more along the lines of how we'd be double tonguing. But to work on balancing the tongue, I'm going to do the opposite. Kutu, kutu. In my head, I think kitty, 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 because kutu isn't a common word pairing for me to think. So going up the same A harmonic minor scale, 8th notes with reverse double tonguing. Kutu, kutu, kutu. Let's give it a try. 1, 2, and 3, and... What I notice with especially my adult students is the desire to skip steps. And I understand with my adult students, that's largely because you've all just worked a long day and you only have X number of minutes to practice and you want to get right to it. I do continuously caution, don't skip steps, because if you skip steps, you might be missing the point. So this slower articulation practice is the foundation for faster articulation that's free and easy, because it's easier to focus on what's going on in the throat, or preferably what's not going on in the throat, meaning we don't want the throat too engaged in the double tonguing. The tongue does connect pretty far back and down. And so when you're thinking double tongue, we have to have that continuously concentrated, extra open throat to allow the air to flow through the throat. When the air column is continuous, the tongue doesn't have to do as much work. It just kind of floats along on the air column. So that's why I try double time, tuku, 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 tuku. Let's say we did tuku, 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 tuku. So one group of 16th notes per note. Tuku, 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 etc. 1, 2 E and a 3 E and a. And yes, I always practice my double tonguing as legato as possible. The size of my tongue, which is really going to determine the amount of silence, isn't going to change much. I mean, it could be wider or more pointed, but my tongue is my tongue. What's going to make notes sound shorter in a lot of cases is going to be tempo. So if I know that I'm going to be playing fast, I practice very legato slow to make sure that I have the continuous column of air. Then as I go faster, the notes begin to sound shorter just because the amount of silence created by my tongue stopping the air in the front of my face isn't becoming shorter. So if I have sound, silence from the tongue, sound, as I get faster, that silence from the tongue is staying the same. So the ratio of sound to silence is increasing. So the notes are sounding shorter the faster I go. Does that kind of make sense? How many of you have ever really purposely practiced legato double tonguing in that way? I think you'll find that you'll have more tone in all of your double tonguing as you do so. That air column is what's important here. So with the tongue a little bit warmed up, those double tonguing sections that we see in the presto section, what is that, measure 146, become a little bit less scary. Measure 231, and then the entire prestissimo ending. So this section of double tonguing in the pop, and I'm just going to go to measure 231 because in my version I can see it without flipping pages. Let's all of us look at 231, and some of you are sight reading, so let's first think the notes. We have B, E, C, B, A, E, C, A, G sharp, B, E, D, C, B, A, F, E, B, C, B, A, E, F, D, E, A, G sharp, B, A, C, A. I mean, that's so lovely melody, A minor, that'll be worth playing. I know you see 16th notes. I know you want to play it fast, and I know you want to play it 16th-y. But let's try doing it all slurred, which is going to sound like an eighth note melody. So this is measure 231 in the pop, or the 8 measures right before the prestissimo if you don't have measure numbers. So if you just downloaded it, you might not have measure numbers. Find the prestissimo at the end of the piece, and then just go back like 8 measures or so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, 8 measures. It should look like a piano, and that's where the 16th notes start near the end of the piece. So 8th note, all slur, practice there. 1 and 2 and ready. I'm going to do that again with the original sound on, so that way my sound also comes through. Maybe we'll do it together. So this is all 8th notes, all slurred. 1 and 2 and ready. I am practicing something that's going to be double tongued, I always play it slurred first because, as you've heard me say 10 times, ease of double tonguing is all about the consistency of the column of air. So we don't want to be stopping and starting the air column. We want the air to be continuous. Where we're going to hear stopping and stopping of sound is going to be caused by the tongue in the front of the mouth. So the air column is continuous all the way up until it reaches where the tongue is. So go ahead and try that one more time, just all slurred. Maybe even don't worry so much of the notes and just feel the air column. Focus just on that column of continuous air. Now we're still under tempo here. Let's try thinking of it as tongued 16th notes, but do all two. Two, 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 which is going to be more comfortable. And the reason it's more comfortable is because we've been twoing since 5th grade or 7th grade or whenever you started flute, and we didn't start cooing until much later, right? So let's do that melody. Imagine the continuous column of air, 16th note tonguing on 2. 1 E and a 2 E and a ready. The challenge will be, as we do this again, to make it sound exactly the same, 16th notes, all coo. Coo, 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 or ka, or whatever your second syllables is. 1 E and a 2 E and a coo. And it took me a second to find that, and it might take you. So I would do the coo practice again. Go ahead and try that a bit. Coo, 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 coo. Keep the air column flowing. When we feel satisfied that our two practice and our coo practice are balanced, we have a good understanding of the column of air, the throat feels open, there's not additional tension coming, then let's try alternating. Two coo, two coo, two coo, two coo, two coo in traditional double tonguing style. 1 E and a 2 E and a ready. And what we're listening for is balance in the tonguing, both in tone and also evenness. So the two is a stronger part of our tongue than the coo. So sometimes we have like a galloping sound if the tongue isn't balanced. Right? Which we don't want. So listen for the balance between the two parts of the tongue, both in the tone and in just the evenness of the rhythm there. I would practice all 4 steps, slur, two, coo, at various tempos until I can no longer single tongue. Then I would just alternate between the slur and the double tongue. So if I were to take this twice as fast, I would still start with slur in my practice. 1, 2, ready? thinking that exact same air and phrasing. So I'm wanting to bring out that middle E. Add the double tongue. 1, 2, ready? And alternate between slurring and double tonguing to make sure that the air column feels continuous or the same in both. Any other thoughts about double tonguing, suggestions, advice, questions, or comments? Any other thoughts, questions, advice, or concerns about this piece in general, anywhere in it? Or would anybody like to play a little example of a part that they like or a part that they feel challenging? Well, with that, I'm going to say adieu. So thank you all so much for joining. With this piece, I hope that I don't know if it's on My Pianist Pro, some of the pieces he puts completely on there for free. Yuho, many of you met him. He did an interview with Solo of a Month last year sometime. Yuho is just the sweetest man, and he is doing a great job of keeping up with the solos that we're doing in this group. So download the My Pianist Pro app and see which ones are free. I think you can at least do clips of them, even if you don't have the paid version. So this might be available. Does anybody have the free version of the app? And if so, can you tell me how much, if any, of the pop is available on the free version? All right, well, give it a try. So thank you, of course, Flute World, for hosting us, the Flute World Collective. Thank you all for being here. If you ever have any questions or thoughts, I'd love to hear it. And also, as we are looking at the way that the Flute World Collective is going to evolve throughout the year and in the future, any feedback that you have on these practice sessions in general, please do let me know about your thoughts of them. I want to make sure that we are serving the community as well as we can. So I'm going to put my, if I can type in and put my email here, I can't say it out loud apparently. JLSMITH code. You all have my email. You all can find me. I'm on the socials too. Pop is only for subscribers. Okay. So sorry about that. I didn't know if you had like a little free thing. Any feedback that you have about these classes, about how you'd like to see the future of them look, I'd really love to hear. Thank you all for being here, and I'll look forward to listening to some of your recordings of the Faure and Popp on the 2 Solo of the Month groups.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you
love
for
these
your time.
lessons.